Hey Sojourning Scholars, Chucky here from SojourningScholar.com, and in this video, we're going to be talking about how to navigate the OPT RFE, coming right up. So you've just gone through the stress of submitting your I-765 application for your OPT or your STEM-OPT EAD, and after several weeks of waiting for a response from USCIS, you check the status of your case and you see an update that says that you've received a request for evidence from USCIS. Now that's a bummer, and in this video I'm going to be discussing some of the common reasons that I've found that F-1 students applying for the OPT or STEM-OPT might receive an RFE from USCIS. So if you've received an RFE from USCIS on your OPT or your STEM-OPT application, in this video, you're going to get some helpful tips that you can follow when responding to your RFE. And on the other hand, if you're an F-1 student who's yet to apply for your OPT, well, in this video, you're going to get some helpful tips that you can follow to reduce your chances of receiving an RFE. So first of all, what exactly is an RFE and what does this document look like? The RFE is a document issued by USCIS whenever USCIS needs some extra information from you in order to process your immigration case. And if you check the status of your case in the USCIS case tracking tool, you will see a status update that says that an RFE has been issued and mailed to you. And when you get this letter in the mail, it's going to have a list of issues that USCIS needs you to address in order for your application to be adjudicated. Right off the bat, one of the most important sections of the RFE is the deadline to respond to the RFE that's normally contained within the second paragraph on the RFE. Now, you should make a note of this date and ensure that your response to the RFE is received by USCIS before this date is reached. Now, the main downside of receiving the RFE is that the processing of your OPT or your STEM-OPT application is going to be suspended until USCIS receives your response. And so this essentially prolongs the total processing time of your OPT or your STEM-OPT application. Now, if you've got an RFE, you should breathe a sigh of relief knowing that you have a second opportunity to put together a strong application for your OPT or your STEM-OPT application. Just because you got an RFE does not mean that your initial application is going to be denied. If that were to be the case, USCIS would send you a letter called a Notice of Intent to Deny, which is much more difficult to overcome relative to the RFE. Now, one of the good things about the RFE, if you can say so, is that USCIS would explicitly tell you what documents you need to provide in order for your application to be processed. And if you can successfully provide the evidence that's required by USCIS, then you have a higher likelihood of getting your application approved. So now I'm going to break down 5 common reasons why F-1 students applying for the OPT or the STEM-OPT might receive an RFE from USCIS. Now, some of these reasons are not particularly obvious, so you want to make sure to watch this through to the end. And if you'd like to see a full list of 11 common reasons why F-1 students might receive an OPT RFE, check out the link in the description section below to our blog post on SojourningsCholar.com. Now, for a quick disclaimer, the content of this video should not be considered as legal advice. If you seek personalized legal advice, I highly recommend you seek the counseling of a licensed immigration attorney. Now, the first reason why you might receive an OPT RFE on your OPT application or your STEM-OPT application has to do with not meeting the right requirements for your passport photograph. Now, the passport photograph that's taken to support your OPT application needs to be a 2" by 2" colored passport photograph taken against a white background. This photograph must show a clear image of your face and it should not be photo edited by any means. If you'd like to see the correct specifications for your passport photograph used to support your OPT application, I'll leave a link in the description section below to the US Department of State website that explicitly specifies the requirements you must meet for your passport photograph to be accepted. Another common reason for an OPT RFE could happen when you use a passport photograph that you've used on a previous immigration case. For example, an F-1 student who's applied for the 24-month STEM-OPT extension using the same passport photograph on the initial post-completion OPT application might receive an RFE from USCIS because this would imply that the passport photograph does not meet the 6-month requirement specified by USCIS. So right there is an obvious reason where you could prevent receiving an OPT RFE by making sure that your passport photograph meets all the requirements specified by USCIS. I would highly recommend that when getting a passport for your OPT or your STEM-OPT application, you should consider getting this done professionally or semi-professionally. For example, you could go to a local grocery store such as CVS, Walmart, or Walgreens and you can have this taken care of. The second common reason for an OPT RFE is forgetting to provide supporting documents for your OPT application or your STEM-OPT application respectively. For example, an F-1 student applying for the STEM-OPT extension will be required to provide supporting documents such as copies of the previous EAD card that was issued for the post-completion OPT. Failing to provide any of these supporting documents could easily lead to an OPT RFE, thereby delaying the length of time it's going to take you to obtain your EAD card. Now, if you're going to be applying for your post-completion OPT, you can find a link to a free downloadable PDF checklist that keeps you on track to provide all the required supporting documents when applying for your post-completion OPT. The third common reason for an OPT RFE could be a surprising one, and that is when there are errors on your I-20 endorsed for OPT or STEM-OPT by your designated school official. Now, believe it or not, your designated school official is capable of making mistakes just like anybody else. And that's why when applying for the OPT, you will need to make sure that you thoroughly review your I-20 issued by your DSO, ensuring that there are no inconsistencies. And if you find any inconsistencies on your I-20, make sure to bring this to the attention of your designated school official before submitting a copy of your I-20 as part of your application packet. Now, the thing about requests for evidence issued by USCIS is that they are highly subjective. For example, you can have two applicants applying for the OPT using the exact same documentation, and one applicant receives an RFE while the other applicant does not get an RFE. And so while you might not be able to guarantee with 100% certainty that you're not going to get an RFE, by following these tips, you can significantly reduce your chances of getting an RFE. The fourth reason for an OPT RFE commonly occurs when F-1 students are applying for the 24-month STEM-OPT extension. Now, what's important about the STEM-OPT extension is that unlike the initial post-completion OPT, where you don't provide any information about your employer, in the case of the STEM-OPT, you're going to be providing detailed information about your employer on the Form I-98320 plan and also on the Form I-765. One major mistake F-1 students make when applying for the 24-month STEM-OPT extension is using the incorrect name for the employer. Most employers operate with DBA names, where DBA stands for doing business as, and commonly these names are different from the actual legal name of the employer. Another mistake here is that when F-1 students are applying for the STEM-OPT extension, they might use an incorrect E-Verify number for the employer. Without the correct name and E-Verify number of your employer, USCIS would be unable to determine if your employer is enrolled in the E-Verify program and would issue a request for evidence. So to reduce your chances of receiving an OPT RFE for this reason, you should contact the Human Resource Department of your employer and request that they provide you with the correct E-Verify number and the correct legal name of the employer. And finally, the fifth common and surprising reason why F-1 students might receive an OPT RFE is when there are inconsistencies in your reported employment to the Department of Homeland Security. Now, when you engage in optional practical training, you're required to report any changes in your employment to the Student and Exchange Register Program, SEVP. Some examples of changes in your employment that you should be reporting are things like when you lose your job or you gain a new job, or when you change from one employer to the other. And so, if the Student and Exchange Register Program finds out that there are certain inconsistencies in your employment record, they might issue a request for evidence to make sure that you've not violated your status during the course of your OPT. So how should you respond to an RFE? Well, the first thing you want to do is to read and understand the reason why the OPT RFE was issued in the first place. And if this doesn't make sense to you, you should reach out to your school's designated school official and ask for clarification. When responding to an RFE, you need to make sure that all the evidence you provide should be included in one single package and mailed to USCIS at the exact same time. You're also required to submit this original RFE letter alongside the rest of your other supporting documents to USCIS. This original RFE letter should be the first page on the packets that you're going to be mailing to USCIS. Now, before sending this original RFE letter, it's best to make a copy for your record. Also, when mailing your response to the OPT RFE, you should request a confirmation of delivery from your mailing service provider. This way, you can track the status of your delivery and guarantee that you have an evidence to show that your OPT RFE response was delivered to USCIS in a timely fashion. And naturally, you'd like to know how long it takes for USCIS to process your response to your OPT RFE. Usually, USCIS would state on your OPT RFE letter the length of time that you can expect your OPT application to be processed after they've received your OPT RFE response. And if your OPT application is not processed within this time frame, you may contact USCIS and request that they expedite the processing of your OPT application. Now, I hope you found this information helpful. If you have any questions, you can leave a comment down below. Thanks for watching this video, and as always, be unbounded.